So there's that thing you do. You know what I'm talking about. And you know it's bad. You're fully aware of all the negative effects it has on either your physical health, mental health, or both. So of course, logically, you decide, I'm gonna stop doing the thing. And some time goes by, maybe it's a day, a week, a month, and you're starting to feel the benefits of going without this thing. But then one day, you get put in a triggering situation. The waves of dopamine flood your receptors as your mind generates every possible reason why you should do the thing, and you do the thing. The negative emotions like shame, frustration, depression wash over you as you think to yourself, I thought I was actually done this time. I just wasted all that effort. What happened to my willpower? See, this isn't the real you. Stop trying to change. You never will. But then it gets worse because something strange happens. Instead of getting back on the path you were on, the path to freedom from the thing, you do the thing again. And again. And again. And trust me, I've been there. I am no better than you. I know exactly how it is. For the longest time, even when I knew I needed to quit, my biggest struggle, the biggest thing I just kept binging and relapsing over and over on was pornography. I tried to do the whole nofap thing. I'd get like a 3-day streak, maybe even a week, but eventually something would trigger me or my thoughts would whittle down my willpower to the breaking point and I would just give in. And then I would do it again and again and one more time before bed. And by the end of it, you're just kind of playing with a gummy worm, can't even get fully bricked, which logically doesn't make sense because if it's something you don't want to do that is wreaking havoc on your life, then why is it the moment you give in and do it, all of a sudden it is this precious resource that you can get as much of it as you possibly can before you sacrifice and go without it for a long period of time. It's the same with obesity. When you're trying to cut out junk food, think about it. A fat person doesn't binge on just one cupcake. They eat the cupcake, they have a bag of chips, they drive through McDonald's, they have a large soda. How many people do you know that try to quit smoking or drinking just relapse on one cigarette or one beer? Never happens, right? They go full balls to the wall.
Finally, it's time, my precious.
This is what I call the binge fallacy, and it is probably the biggest thing I see in like the self-development world that holds people back the most. Because think about it, in reality, if you mess up and do the bad thing once, that's not nearly bad as doing it once and then doing it 4 more times. That is 5 times the amount of damage if you were to just do it once and get back on track. But the human mind doesn't work that way because our brains tell us, well, I already did it once, the day's already ruined, I might as well do it again and again and again, and then I'm gonna get back on track tomorrow. Even after I quit pornography, I started experiencing this again recently in self-development because, you start your morning routines, you have your day structured out, and it may be, you wake up, you have your cold shower, and then I go on a walk or the gym, and I have breakfast, and then I meditate, and then I journal, and then I have my caffeine, and then I start working, and then I stop at this time, and I go do this, and that's how my days were. And everything was going good until some days, a wrench got thrown in to the system. Maybe I slept past my alarm, maybe I had to go do something last minute in the morning and it threw my whole routine off. And for some reason, my brain would go, oh, well, the routine's messed up, so this whole day's kind of a waste. Let's just fuck off, let's do more bad stuff, and we'll start again tomorrow. We can start fresh the next day. There's always tomorrow, right? Which means that not only does this binge fallacy occur in relation to bad things, but in relation to not doing the good things we want to do. But even more fucked up is when you abstain from certain bad habits, especially dopamine-related ones, if you go a certain period of time without doing it and then you do it, the dopamine release, all the good brain feel-good chemical releases is more powerful than if you were doing it every single day because you essentially weaned yourself off. You were edging yourself away from it for a while and then you went back to it. If you are addicted to something like pornography or smoking or anything like that, if you're smoking a cigarette every single day, it's nice, it's a cigarette, it's a stimulant, whatever. But if you go a week without smoking a cigarette and you're fiending for it, and then you smoke a cigarette, you're seeing stars, your brain has an orgasm. And if you're someone who's trying to make progress in life, trying to be consistent, trying to give up bad habits or addictions, you've most likely realized by now that this is a cycle. You go back and forth from, it's so over, we're so back, it's so over, we're so back. And by now you've probably realized, like I did, if this cycle isn't broken, then you'll forever be holding yourself back from the very things you're working towards, like making more money so you can have the lifestyle, the things you want, the freedom you want, attracting great friends and partners, and just overall living a better and more fulfilling life that doesn't involve you taking a Mike Tyson blow to the mental health once every week or month or 3 days. So I figured this out the hard way. Obviously, it took me a long time to break these cycles, but I did finally find the 5 steps that actually allows you to escape the binge fallacy and break the cycle. But the first thing I used to try and do when I would have my nofap relapses is I would try to just immediately ignore it. think, oh, it's not a big deal. It's okay. I'm back on track now. Whatever. That was just a once in a blue moon type thing. It's not going to happen again. Yada, yada, yada. Push it away. Push it out of my consciousness. I did not want to think about it because obviously there's a lot of negative emotions that would surface. But what actually happened was because I was ignoring it and not taking it seriously, that communicated to my subconscious that this is not something to take serious. So the next time I got an urge or something triggered me, I wouldn't take what I did that serious and I would relapse again. Instead, what I needed to do was step 1, acknowledgement. After you do the bad thing, acknowledge that it happened, acknowledge what led you there, and most importantly, acknowledge why you don't want it to happen again. What was the reason you were going without the bad thing in the first place? And this requires you to have some big picture idea. How does this tie into that true core goal, your why, your purpose that you are working towards? And if you can't tie this into that, you're going to struggle infinitely more than someone who understands how this plays into the big picture of their life and their goals. But even if you do that, most likely you're going to get the urge to do it again at some point. And typically our initial reaction is to, well, I'm going to distract myself from the urge. I'm going to go do something productive. I'm going to think other thoughts, think positive thoughts, but that is actually setting you up for long-term failure and eventual relapse. Because the urge is coming in, it's appearing in your consciousness, and you're just trying to introduce a whole bunch of other things to kind of cloud it and make yourself unable to perceive it in the current moment. But that doesn't actually get rid of the urge, and it'll just go back to the subconscious, and it'll pop back up later. Go back down, pop back up later. Or even worse, it stays in your conscious mind. It keeps poking at you, tempting you, triggering you until your mental willpower, because willpower is a limited resource, I've talked about that in some of my other videos, gets whittled down to the breaking point and you give in. But instead of that, do step 2, observe the urge. And I know that sounds counterintuitive at first because you think, oh, what? You want me to sit with the urge? Isn't that going to whittle down my willpower, make me relapse? No, because you are observing it from a mindful perspective. You are using the skill of metacognition to observe this appearance in your mind and consciousness, but you're not identifying with it. Because in reality, it's not really you. It's a signal from your brain trying to convince you that it's you, so it propels you into doing the thing that gives it the good chemical release. You need to understand that you are not your thoughts. For example, if I'm looking out of my balcony and I see a mom walking her baby in the carriage, and for some fucked up reason my brain thinks, snipe the baby, pull out a sniper rifle, snipe the baby, I would laugh it off and be like, oh, that's a fucked up thought. That's stupid. That's silly. Yada, yada, yada. We've all had bad thoughts like that before, but we're so quickly to be like, oh, that's not actually me thinking that. Why is it no different when you get these thoughts that try to propel you into a relapse? Because once you're able to detach from the thought and observe it, it disappears. It's like shining a spotlight on a shadow. If you shine the spotlight on a shadow, the shadow dissolves. Because at the end of the day, no thought or emotion lasts forever. The urge doesn't pop up and it's going to torment you day after day for the rest of your life until you finally give in. No, it's going to disappear, sometimes after a few minutes. But of course, this does require a bit of a skill in terms of metacognition, which is being aware and in control of your own mind, of your own thoughts, the things that appear. And for me, and for thousands of people that have done my guide and all my students in mental mastery, meditation, guided meditations in a specific way, was the game changer. So if you're interested in that, I do have a free 5-day series to get you started, as well as I recently launched my full 30-day guided series that previously was only available to my students, but now it's available as its own thing. Link in the description if you want to check out Conscious Catalyst. But even when you do that, wouldn't it be even better if you just had less urges and triggers throughout the day? Well, you can do that by putting up the bumpers. Step 3. I had a friend who was struggling with some bad habits, but once he enlisted in the military and went through basic training, he completely quit all of his bad habits. He came out of it saying how much he's changed, how he doesn't even feel the urge to do these things anymore. But pretty shortly after, once he got back into regular life and some of the old things he used to do and the freedom to do things again, he fell back into one of the biggest bad habits he had, which was pornography. It's like when you go to a bowling alley and there's some kids in a lane, and what the bowling alley does is they put up the bumpers to prevent the kid's ball from rolling into the gutter because kids are dog shit at bowling because they're little. What happened to him was when he went into basic training, all of the bumpers were put up for him. He wasn't able to do the bad habits. He wasn't able to experience the triggers and urges that he used to in regular life. But once he got out of that, went back into regular life, the bumpers came down. The gutters were fully available for him to throw his balls into. So what he then needed to do was create his own bumpers. If taking a certain route home from work causes you to binge on McDonald's, you need to take a different route home from work. If using your laptop in bed creates the urge for naughty websites, don't allow electronics in your room. If going out late at night causes you to drink a bunch of alcohol, You need to stop staying out so late. Identify where most commonly you get hit with these urges and these triggers and put bumpers around those gutters so you don't fall into them. But another thing I realized my friend was doing that was setting himself up for failure is when he was telling me about this, he was talking about himself pretty negatively. He was referring to himself as degenerate and saying things like, oh, I've lost all my good character traits. And that is actually pushing him more towards the bad habit. Even if it seems like, oh, all this negative emotion, that's good, it's going to push you away from that. Not in this sense, because it is lowering his self-image to a lower version of himself. And what does the lower version of himself do? The bad thing. I want you to imagine a young child in your life. Maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a cousin. And if you can't think of anything, just picture a young version of yourself. If that little kid made a mistake, would you then belittle the shit out of them? I'm talking like really lay into them, roast them, tell them you hate them. They're never going to improve. They're never going to get better. They should just give up. They suck. Well, no. Unless you're an absolute monster, you wouldn't say that to a little kid. Sure, you would acknowledge it and you may even punish them for it, but you would never lose the love and care that you have for them because of that mistake. Why do you treat yourself any different? Plus, understand that everyone is human. I know you watch these self-improvement videos, these motivational videos, and these gurus seem like they're perfect. They stay hard 24/7. They are not faulting whatsoever. Even the most disciplined men on the planet have made a ton of mistakes in their past and had to overcome them to achieve that level of discipline. And if you're a man of faith like me, you probably believe that humans in general are just inherently sinful. So mistakes are going to happen along the way to become better, more Christ-like. Instead, see if you can engage in positive self-talk even after the bad thing. Think about all those negative emotions you're feeling. Oh wow, that's why I'm quitting this thing. That thing sure is bad. I'm really glad that I'm making progress and breaking free from this thing. I'm not actually the type of person to do this thing. It was a little mistake. I'm going to put up bumpers. I'm going to make all these habits. I'm going to make all these changes that Kenny told me to do, and we're going to be better moving forward. And that is a great way to get started on step 5. Step back into the higher self ASAP. This is what 99% of self-improvement guys get wrong. They think, oh, I have to do all the good things to eventually become this high version of myself, the ideal version of myself, when in reality, that's not the case. You become the ideal version of yourself, and then you get all the good things. And of course, first you do need to work on becoming that higher version of yourself. I teach you exactly how to do this in Mental Mastery, link in the description, but understand that you can step right back into that version of yourself in a relatively short span of time, even after bad thing happens. So just try it. Even if it feels forced, engage in some positive self-talk, get right back on track on what would the higher version of me do in this moment. He wouldn't sit around moping. He wouldn't think, oh, I'm so bad. I'm a poo-poo degenerate. And of course, when you're killing the past version of yourself, when you're undoing a lot of this negative subconscious programming, your mind, the past self, is going to say and do anything it can to save its life because it's dying, right? Think about if you were dying, you would give it your all right before you died. I said dying a lot in there. I'm sorry. Just be conscious, be mindful, and never listen to that voice. But most likely, you've probably realized that if this is something that you've been struggling with for a very long time, there are some deep subconscious programming at play, and you need to reprogram that in order to finally fully break free and never do the thing again. And one of the biggest factors in your subconscious programming is the identity. If the subconscious is a ship taking you towards a destination, the identity is the captain steering the ship. It is the programmer writing the code into your brain. So if you would like to fully reinvent yourself and generate a new identity, click the video on the screen right now. If you want my full flagship self-improvement masterclass that teaches you every single little step of the way to fully reprogram your mind and become a more conscious, more focused, more disciplined, more confident individual, check out Mental Mastery in the description. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.